Hey class, this is Brian Tabonda, and my presentation will be on learned helplessness and overjustification. For both the readings by David McRaney, the general ideas have been discussed in the assigned chapters is the concept of conditioning. As human beings, we are a result of various and continuous sequences of stimuli and responses. But these responses to our environment are unique in their own manner because everyone has their own biological responses to specific stimuli. For example, you present your two friends that have come over to your house with lasagna. One of your friends gladly accepts the lasagna because it reminds him of his grandmother who is associated in his mind with good memories, while the other friend kindly rejects it because he remembers the time he was food poisoned by lasagna and caused him to throw up. In this case, there is one external stimuli, the lasagna, but two different responses by two different people based on the individual experience that determine the biological response as well as behavioral response to the stimuli presented. This is a purely simplified explanation of what a behavioral psychologist believes is the sum of behavior. Keep in mind that this does not account for what conditioning is. Generally speaking, conditioning is defined as learned responses to external stimuli. This means that our behavior is a result of learned responses, so we can learn to modify our behavior according to what is recently learned and reinforced. This is also the main concept behind cognitive behavioral therapy. Going back to the topic at hand, in the book You Are Not So Smart, David McRaney states that the general misconception is that in a bad situation, people will be willing to do whatever it takes to escape the situation. He states that this is not actually true, but that people who believe that they are not in control of their destiny will accept the situation and will try not to escape even when they are presented with the option for escape. In fact, these people will often give up and accept the bad situation. The act of accepting and trying not to escape is the basis of learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is where there has been consistent negative situations that help a person learn to determine that all aspects of their life will be in the same negative manner. They'll react negatively to situations. Overall, McRaney states that people who have been accustomed to negative stimuli will eventually learn that there is nothing they can do to avoid the situation, so they often become reluctant to change it. This is often the case with depressed people and specific mental illnesses such as anxiety disorders, which is when specific responses are spread to more general areas of life. So to begin with a more historical explanation of how learned helplessness was discovered, it was by the psychologist Martin Seligman, who expanded on Ivan Pavlov's study on dogs. This brings me back to the original concept of conditioning. Ivan Pavlov's classical conditioning is based on taking a stimuli that already has a response and pairing it with a neutral stimuli to have the same response, such as bell and salivation for the dogs. Whenever a dog hears the bell, they start salivating. Seligman tried to do the same thing but instead electrified the dogs and put them in a box with a fence to see if they would jump to escape. He soon found that the dogs who had been electrified did not try to do anything to escape, but dogs that were not electrified actually did. So the dogs had been accustomed to the pain because they had learned it and soon realized that there was nothing they could do to escape. This, according to McRaney, comes from the biological need to conserve resources within the organism. But according to other research, it states that Seligman was not able to account for why people react differently to the same negative event. For example, some people might get bad grades and think that it is a chance to improve, while others might blame themselves and feel despair. That is when the concept of explanatory style comes into play. Explanatory style, in simple terms, is how a person explains to themselves and often to others about a negative event. Essentially, it is how they perceive the experience. Some people have an optimistic explanatory style, while others have a pessimistic one. According to the literature, McRaney states that there are three gradients in which pessimistic explanatory styles can form, which is personal, pervasive, and permanent. After reading all of the information, learned helplessness is closely related to efficacy expectation and locus of control, which in turn is related to self-esteem. The person who sees matters negatively will think that it is all their fault. They will think, I am stupid, which is personal. When they think it is permanent, they will think that things will never change. And then the idea of that becomes pervasive because the person thinks that it must hold true for all aspects of life. Essentially, if a person has a high internal locus of control, which means that they believe that they are in control of their destiny, then that person will be less susceptible to learned helplessness. While the opposite holds true for someone who has a high external locus of control because they believe external forces affect their destiny. But according to the research, learned helplessness, the effective failure on test taking, conducted at Cedarville University, people who tend to blame external forces are less susceptible to learned helplessness. The researchers explained that learned helplessness is likely to occur in situations where failure is uncontrollable. This experiment is similar to the one conducted by Cerise Nixon. The experimenters wanted to know if making some of the test takers do harder questions first would make them give up on the easier ones that followed. They found that the students who were first given harder questions did as well as the students who were given easy questions on the hard section but failed on the easier question. Essentially, in order to build confidence and to avoid learned helplessness, a person must do easier tasks in order to have higher efficacy expectations, meaning the ability to believe that you can accomplish a task before taking on harder tasks. Another way to prevent learned helplessness, according to McRaney, is to make choices that make you feel like you have control, whether big or small. In the book You Are Now Less Dumb, McRaney brought up the topic of the overjustification effect. I believe that this is an important topic nowadays, especially because it pertains to college or returning students in particular. Here, McQueen states that the general misconception is that people should get paid to do what they love. But the truth again here is that getting paid for what you love actually does the opposite because you start attributing external forces like money, and this essentially lessens the passion and makes what you like a mundane task. I found this topic to be interesting, especially because McRaney makes it a point to state that money actually does and doesn't buy you happiness. This concept is primarily linked to that of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and also B.F. Skinner's concept of operant conditioning, which again brings me back to the general theme of the two chapters. So McRaney states that a person can buy happiness, but only at the basic level, which is satisfying your needs, such as food, water, shelter, clothes, which is at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. After careful analysis by researchers that found that this cap of fulfilling basic needs is at $75,000 a year, anything beyond this point does not increase happiness. After that point, according to Maslow, each need has to be satisfied before moving to the next level. Self-actualization being the ultimate goal, which is being able to do what you love and being satisfied and successful in all aspects of life, which to me is hard to attain but also can be achieved by a handful of people. So starting at the beginning, B.F. Skinner, who was the father of operant conditioning, saw life essentially as pursuit of rewards and the avoidance of punishment. A purely hedonistic approach to life, some might claim. As a hardcore behaviorist, he believed that behavior is a collection of learned responses to stimuli which made him believe that there was no such thing as free will. Essentially, he stated that humans work towards rewards and avoid punishment. He believed in reinforcing, hence rewarding good behavior more so than punishing bad behavior because it was more effective. Rewards consist of extrinsic motivation compared to the intrinsic motivation. The overjustification effect is when extrinsic rewards decrease a person's intrinsic motivation to complete a task. The grader describes an experiment where the children who were given rewards for completing a piece of art over time, even when the experiment ended, chose not to make art because they were able to analyze themselves and make up a story about the situation. This is called the self-perception theory. Since the children found that they were able to get a reward, with the absence of the reward, they no longer had a reason to paint. In essence, a person is able to observe their behavior and then make up a story about their behavior to justify it. So people in experiments where they were not paid a lot of money tend to have internal justification, something that explains why they carried out their actions. It helps them to understand the gap between tedious work and the reward. When the reward is lacking, simple statements like "I enjoyed the job" seem to suffice. Since the reward was lacking, they were more intrinsically motivated, while those who had high rewards like getting paid were extrinsically motivated. Motivation, whether intrinsic or extrinsic, are essentially the modes by which we operate well within a given task. But the overjustification effect threatens our way of seeing things. If we choose to believe that the reason that we do things is because of extrinsic rewards, then we see tasks as a means to an end, which means that Skinner's statements hold true. But if we choose to see the beauty in our task and the joys of it, then we are intrinsically motivated, and any extrinsic rewards only let us know that we are doing well and that we are competent at our job, which fuels us to do better. This is known as the competency feedback. The overjustification effect prevents us from essentially giving ourselves a pep talk to do our job, which threatens how well we do our work. The research has been extended to adults and had similar results. As humans, we tend to evaluate our actions based on social norms like respect and market norms like monetary values. Social norms like helping a friend tend to have more intrinsic motivation. So in order to move to a state of being more self-actualized, a person needs to find rewards based on merit. This increases a person's motivation and their expectation efficacy, which is the belief that they are able to do a task. Overall, we can see that conditioning does affect our lives, but at the end of the day, our experiences do determine how we see things, but also our internal self, the one that makes up stories in order to protect our sense of peace or our self-preservation. Self-perception allows us to view things a little askew. In some cases, it does overgeneralize and permeates into our lives, but in most cases, it helps us to understand the reason behind why we do what we do. Although behavioral psychologists tend to overestimate rewards, punishment, stimuli, and response, in the end, a positive outlook, making choices, verbal support, and slight monetary values based on our work and not how fast we get the task done increases competency. All in all, personal perception over prize and punishment.